Straight Outta Compton was the breakthrough that N.W.A, a group formed from the LA suburbs of Compton and South Central Los Angeles, needed. A slow burn, the debut album was eventually a groundbreaking smash, going platinum despite its uncompromising material and minimal airplay, and not only expanding the subgenre of gangsta rap to a much wider audience, but also popularizing a burgeoning West Coast hip-hop scene. But behind the glimmering success and exciting notoriety, it looked like N.W.A was in trouble. And that trouble was not from the LAPD, the FBI, or the law enforcement authorities ready to arrest them on the spot and throw them in jail if they dare perform their red-hot police song while on tour across the country in the summer of 1989. Rather, that threat was from within their own ranks. Just a year before, they had lost their first member, Arabian Prince, who claimed that he wasn't being paid what he was due. But it was easy to dismiss him, since he creatively seemed out of step with the rest of the crew. Consequently, it was a natural shed-in to formalize N.W.A's classic lineup. But now, in 1989, that same classic lineup was in danger of not surviving the year. Ice Cube was the premier rhyming creative of N.W.A, the guy responsible for most of the lyrics fed to Eazy-E and Dr. Dre to make them resemble actual rappers. His contributions as a lyricist were immense. Cube is credited as co-writer of 8 of 13 tracks on Straight Outta Compton, with 2 of them having him as the only writer. He's also credited as co-writer of 4 of 12 tracks on Eazy Does It, the album that was quickly assembled for Eazy-E a month after N.W.A's debut. Combined, the albums sold 2 million certified units by the summer of 1989. And yet, the $32,700 Cube received for his songwriting felt minuscule. As he sat down with a Priority Records publicist who queried about his financial arrangement with the group's manager, Jerry Heller, he began to ask questions. Is this it for all my contributions? What about my publishing royalties? And why isn't Eazy Does It considered as much of an N.W.A album as Straight Outta Compton, even though the former has Eazy-E's name on it? By August 1989, when the Straight Outta Compton tour concluded, Cube also inquired about what he believed were financial discrepancies between the ticket sales and his payout. Only $23,000 out of a $650,000 gross, while Jerry Heller gets $130,000? He must have thought, I don't recall Jerry jumping on stage rapping those songs and having to escape arrest for performing the police. It was the same issue that reportedly drove Arabian Prince away. Money. But Cube was no Arabian Prince. His contributions dwarfed that of Arabians like an elephant does a warthog. Cube felt, nay, believed that he deserved more. A lot more. An additional $120,000 according to his legal counsel, and that's before even considering the publishing royalties. Ice Cube wouldn't budge, even when he was offered $75,000. Then again, the offer served a dual purpose: payment for previous work and an advance for the next N.W.A album. Plus, in order to get the money, he needed to sign the accompanying contract, which didn't convince him that it was part of a collective plan to officially make N.W.A a group. That wasn't good enough for Cube, but apparently it was for everybody else, who had never felt so handsomely compensated for their efforts and ended up signing their contracts. Eazy-E called Cube bluff, and Dre, the closest of the members to Cube, began to see him as an ingrate, even though Cube had sown in him the first seeds of doubt regarding his future at Ruthless Records. But maybe the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back wasn't, according to conventional belief, just about the money. There were other factors. As the most social-politically minded voice in N.W.A, Cube must have felt constrained within a group. He especially didn't appreciate Jerry Heller vetoing the decision to go on Voices of America, an upcoming hour-long TV show created by civil rights leader Jesse Jackson to participate in a discussion about the controversial music that children were being exposed to. Cube believed that it was a missed opportunity for N.W.A to win followers to their stance and deepen their nationwide exposure, and he was angry at Heller for preventing that from happening, not because of any principles, but because it wasn't going to be a paid appearance. Then there was his future as an artist. After Eazy, it was obvious that Ice Cube had enough talent and star power to deserve a solo record. but Ruthless Records vetoed his upcoming debut in favor of him serving as primary songwriter for a group that Eazy had recently signed out of Pomona, a city in Los Angeles County about 40 miles east of Compton. The name of the group? Above the Law. To make matters worse, the DLC, who was a songwriter but not a member of N.W.A, already had an album out in July. No one can do it better. And it was certified gold by September. How did the DLC have a solo album before Cube? It was no use. Heller wasn't going anywhere. His group mates were not in his corner. He seemed to be creatively and philosophically misaligned with N.W.A. He was not getting that solo debut album anytime soon, and he wasn't going to get the money he felt he deserved. By December of '89, Cube was gone. Ice Cube left a pretty serious void, considering how valuable of a crew member he was. He could occasionally elude the hedonistic attitude that plagued his companions with his more insightful, socially aware lyrics. He was virtually unmatched in flow, delivery, and presence, and he was a primary songwriter for Dr. Dre and Eazy-E. Who possibly could fill Cube's shoes? According to the remaining group members, another monkey don't stop no show. They still had Ren and the DOC as songwriters, with Dr. Dre being the main producer and DJ Yella primarily behind the wheels of steel. So, the absence of Ice Cube shouldn't have been a problem, right? Ice Cube finally got his wish. Now in New York, on the East Coast side of things, Cube was granted by Ruthless Records distributor, Priority Records, his solo album deal. Hooking up with Public Enemy's seminal in-house production unit, the Bomb Squad, Cube finally issued his debut album, America's Most Wanted, on May 14, 1990. Commercially, it was successful, certified gold in 3 months, certified platinum by the following year. Reviews were generally strong. The Source, the premier hip-hop publication at the time, awarded America's Most Wanted a perfect 5 mic rating, making it one of the first albums to receive that honor. Some writers even insinuated that Cube was actually better off without N.W.A. That must have stung the remaining members. As though to counter the general perception that their resources had been depleted with Cube's departure, N.W.A. put out an EP named 100 Miles and Runnin' exactly 3 months after Cube's debut album. It was like, okay, we admit we've been dealt a mighty blow, but we have a follow-up album on the way, so in the meantime, enjoy this appetizer. By this time, it was clear where the strengths of Dr. Dre and DJ Yella, both alumni of the world-class Wrecking Crew, stood. Production credit to both men was more of a formality. Dre was a producer, and Yella was a DJ. Dre had always been a funk savant, proselytized by watching Parliament Funkadelic, the ultimate funk collective, performing at the LA Coliseum. Dre is credited as the main pioneer of G-Funk, gangsta rap beats inspired by the funk music of the 70s, particularly from Parliament Funkadelic, also referred to as P-Funk. From that spark at the LA Coliseum, Dre went through his electro-funk phase during the mid-80s with the world-class Wrecking Crew. Then, as the main producer for N.W.A. and the in-house producer at Ruthless Records, he continued his evolution. Dre experimented with both his EMU SP1200 and session musicians, relying on the latter to interpolate funk and soul records and resorting to sampling if dissatisfied with the results. It's why Straight Outta Compton and Easy Does It are prototypical G-Funk albums. The hints are everywhere, especially in N.W.A.'s Gangsta Gangsta, which contains a sample of that synthesizer whine that sonically mimics the movement of a worm in the Ohio Players' Funky Worm. And with 100 Miles and Runnin', Dre showcases his continuously advancing mixing and layering skills, bringing him closer to the genre-defining work that would mark his peak in the 1990s. The number of samples, ranging from drums and guitar riffs to vocals and sound effects, are still plentiful, close to 10 per song on average. But in this EP, Dre steps it up a couple of notches, moving away from the occasional skeletal feel of Straight Outta Compton, which, to be fair, was comparatively a rush job. Plus, by this time, Dre had produced songs for 4 albums on Ruthless Records after the group's debut, so Dre had ample time and experience to develop a more layered, more melodic, and, consequently, funkier sound. The EP opener, the title track, is simply a marvel to listen to, with the funky guitars, soaring strings, and resounding barrel drums heating things up to resemble a high-speed chase scene from a 70s blaxploitation flick. There is a 9-note flute loop that drives the hypnotic "Just Don't Bite It," placed over a Zimbaku drum break. And that's not all. In line with the risque material, vocal snippets from comic legends such as Richard Pryor, Rudy Ray Moore, Andrew Dice Clay, and LaWanda Page are incorporated to create a body call and response atmosphere, complete with the most memorable line of them all from Just Ice in "That Girl Is a Slut." But the production is one thing, the lyrics are another. Reminder, Cube's gone, so MC Ren and N.W.A associate, the DOC, his rap career all but ended by a car crash the previous year that led to a damaged larynx, pick up the slack in the songwriting department, and Dre occasionally steps from behind the boards to beef up the lyrical output. Ren's efforts are especially remarkable since he is really the only real MC left in the group, and the DLC could no longer rhyme even if he was tapped to take Cube's place. But some things can never be replaced. Ice Cube, even with the exterior of gangsta bluster, had the most expansive socially conscious core, with allusions to black self-determination as a link to the struggles of people of African descent across the world. The rest of the group, especially Eazy-E, as the boss of the group and owner of Ruthless Records, was the exact opposite. To them, Black power and Pan-Africanism were nonsensical. Many rappers didn't say or do much beyond sporting African medallions around their necks, and why worry about someone else's house when you have yours to worry about?
There was a statement made, I'm not sure which one of you this quote belongs to, but it was about South Africa, and it was something to the effect of, we don't care about them because they don't care about us.
It ain't like that. It ain't like that. It's like this. All right. You got like people out in the community now, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a fad, all the black power stuff. It's like a fad right now. And there's a lot of people that know what's going on, but then there's people that don't know what's going on. You know what?
They want to wear the black medallions because everybody else is wearing it.
They faking it. And we just addressed that like, if you don't know what you're talking about, shut up. Don't even wear it if you don't know what you're talking about.
This is how we feel about it. If you got a light bill and your neighbor has a light bill, whose light bill you going to take care of first? You're going to take care of home first.
Yeah, because it's too many problems over here for them to be trying to worry about over there. In the first place, they don't know what they're talking about. So, you know, get home straight.
Word up.
So when our government is working real hard to help South Africa, they should help Compton first, is what you're saying.
Not only Compton.
They should help everywhere.
Not only
So, with their creative capabilities and philosophical stance in mind, the best song in 100 Miles and Running is the one that maximizes the strengths of the remaining crew members and associates while avoiding the pitfalls of their shortcomings. And that song happens to be the title track. 100 Miles and Running was inspired by the 1979 cult classic film The Warriors, which is centered on a street gang implicated in the assassination of a powerful gang leader in the North Bronx, trying to escape to their home base in Coney Island with a female radio DJ charting their progress throughout. Consequently, 100 Miles and Running is pure suspense and adrenaline that details N.W.A being chased by their favorite adversaries, the cops, with Ren, Dre, and Eazy rapping with more aggression than ever before. The title track sounds literal as they outpace their law enforcement rivals, but it's also metaphorical. Despite the outrage generated from their songs and a key member being gone, they were not done. Dr. Dre had been responsible for bringing Cube into the fold, so the departure stung him. Unsurprisingly, he was the first N.W.A member to strike, with the guy who departed before Cube catching a stray bullet. In The Warriors, the radio DJ wasn't exactly on the side of the fleeing gang, and it's no different here, as the scene where the DJ puts the needle to Nowhere to Run by Martha and the Vandellas is spoofed in the N.W.A song. And then the music descends into melodic darkness, stripped down to the barrel drums, an airy, hauntingly hollow sound, and vinyl scratches from DJ Yella panning from one ear to the other as Ren, Dre, and Eazy rap about the final stretch of their flight. Musically, thematically, cinematically, and atmospherically, 100 Miles and Running is the greatest N.W.A song ever done. That's dope pulling that off without Cube. In fact, the title track is so good that it feels like the other 4 tracks in the EP could never catch up. Pun intended. And it surely isn't because of Dre's production. Eazy-E's self-parody was kept in check in Straight Outta Compton. Now he's omnipresent in the sexually explicit Just Don't Bite It, with his ad-libs and preceding oral sex disaster with some subservient chick. Eazy is not the only culprit here. Ren raps the entire song, which exposes another problem. For all his lyrical skill, Ren was limited in presence, which is why he could be outshined with 2 book-ending skits and in-song ad-libs by a charismatic music mogul who nevertheless didn't plan to be a rapper to begin with. It was N.W.A. under pressure, not just from losing a key member, but from an increasingly raunchier rap scene. They weren't the only ones wreaking havoc in 1989 and 1990. Ever heard of 2 Live Crew? They brought X-rated rap to the mainstream with As Nasty As They Wanna Be, a record that unleashed a typhoon of court battles and morality hand-wringing regarding decency and the First Amendment, and ended up going platinum. And N.W.A. didn't need to look all the way to Miami. To the north of their home base of California was Too Short, who was slowly but surely building his reputation for spitting lewd tales on wax, not to mention popularizing what became his favorite word. There was also Houston's The Ghetto Boys, who by 1990 had secured national distribution for their output and made N.W.A. sound tame by comparison. N.W.A. weren't the only ones pushing the topical boundaries in hip-hop at the time, and they had to be at least in line with what was happening, if not ahead of the game. And Eazy-E was more than happy to continue his knack for stomach-churning humor by injecting a blowjob episode gone awry at the beginning of Just Don't Bite It, followed by a tutorial to correct the problem called N.W.A.'s The Art of Hey, no one ever claimed that Eric was a choir boy. So, with that out of the way, N.W.A. attempt a sequel, with mixed results. Similar to the immediate preceding song, Surprise Part 2 kicks off with a dramatic piece in which 2 troublemaking cops plan to raid N.W.A.'s headquarters, only for them to walk into an ambush. It serves as a prelude to a cop-bashing track, replete with episodes of racial discrimination against blacks and Chicanos between each verse, and boosted by a sped-up sample of Tom Scott and the LA Express's Sneaking in the Back, layered over a feel-good drum break. It's nicely constructed, but lyrically, Surprise Part 2 is hardly the worthy sequel that Police deserves. It never really gets anywhere. There just isn't anything substantial or revealing in the lyrics Dre, Ren, and Eazy-E provide. Oh, so the black police are house as Dre says? Didn't Cube mention something like that before? The last proper song, Real is the 3rd consecutive time where the production outclasses the rapping. It's a delightfully dark, chaotic, and energetic funky rumble of a beat. By this point, 100 Miles and Runnin', as though adhering to its title, has been largely an up-tempo affair. Okay for a trained MC like Ren, but not for relative neophytes like Dre and Eazy, who occasionally strain themselves by raising their voices by several decibels to keep up the pace. It's odd that Dre would construct breakneck beats to rhyme to. Thankfully, 100 Miles and Runnin' would be the first and last time Dre attempted this sort of crap. Then there's the lingering issue of the loss of Cube.
How are things between you guys and Ice Cube?
Well, basically, man, me and Cube, I ain't got no beef with him. He doing what he gotta do.
Dre had sent an opening shot in the title track, but now it's machine gun fire. Generally, Real is really a dig at N.W.A.'s detractors.
They played out, that's what chanting one and they said we ain't having it. People had thought we was finishing and done with, but if you think about it, yo, we really ain't done.
And the second-tier gangster rap acts that emerged after their breakthrough in '89.
And got the nerve to cuss. Only reason your record is because they thought it was us. Yo,
but that didn't mean that Ren and Dre couldn't send a cannonball or 2 Cube's way.
We started out with too much cargo, so I'm glad we got rid of Benedict Arnold.
Sounds like someone's got a lot of hurt feelings, and those feelings didn't remain on wax. By 1990, Dee Barnes had been going strong for a year as the host of Pump It Up, a weekly hip-hop show that aired on Fox. Every week, Barnes would interview the hottest hip-hop stars of the moment and showcase the art form's latest music videos. In a media landscape that was starved for coverage of rap music, Pump It Up was one of the few welcomed outlets, the counterparts to Yo MTV Raps. Dee Barnes had the passion and the background for such a breakthrough role. Originally from New York, she was now based in Los Angeles and thus familiar with the hip-hop scene of both cities. Prior to being the Pump It Up host, she had worked at K-Day, the same LA radio station that once employed Dre and Yella as DJs and was instrumental in N.W.A.'s success. And while working at Fox, she was in school studying journalism, as well as being one half of a rap duo named Body and Soul. Dee and her rhyming partner constituted one of the several acts that appeared on the seminal anti-violence project We're All in the Same Gang, which was released on May 22, 1990, and was produced by Dre. The future looked bright for Dee Barnes. But then it got dark.
Ice Cube, formerly of N.W.A. We're going to be hanging out
Barnes
with
had
him,
interviewed
his new
N.W.A. in
organization, the Lynch
1989
Mob, and
when
find out
Ice
what he's
Cube was a
all
group
about.
member.
So don't
But
believe
by
all
November 1990, with Cube gone and successful as a solo artist, and an EP at the tail end of its promotion, N.W.A. bristled and finally let their feelings known about Cube. Yella memorably pulled an ice cube from his glass, put it on the floor, and crushed it with his heel. Later in the episode, Barnes was conducting an interview with Cube's protege, Yo-Yo, on the set of his debut film, Boys in the Hood, named after the song he wrote for Eazy-E, when he crashed it with a few disparaging words of his own.
I got all suckers 100 miles and run.
A variation of that sub would appear in Cube's own EP a month later. Delighted with the conflict, the producers of Pump It Up decided that the Cube interruption would be appended to the N.W.A. segment to amplify the bad mouthing between both camps. Although Barnes was very much against that idea, the producers ran with it anyway. Her worst fears came to pass on January 27, 1991, at a launch party in a West Hollywood nightclub for the debut album of a rap group that sounded like the New York female version of N.W.A. BWP. Bitches with Problems. Yeah, ridiculous, I know. It so happened that N.W.A. wasn't happy with Pump It Up's hack job, which made it seem like Cube had the last word, and unable to take their frustrations out on the Pump It Up show producers, they did so on Dee Barnes. Reportedly, Dre was the outlet for the group's ire, picking her up by the shirt and slamming her head repeatedly against the wall near a staircase, then unsuccessfully attempting to fling her down the stairs and resorting to punching her repeatedly on the back of the head before leaving her as a crumpled heap on the floor. Dre's assault on Dee Barnes continues to be the most notorious episode of violent misogyny in rap music history. N.W.A. didn't seem to lose much sleep over it.
That's what she get. I hope she get it again. She got beat down. The host of that show, did something and she know what she did and got beat down, and I hope it happened again.
But someone had to pay. Dre's restitution amounted to a $2,500 fine, $1,000 donated to the California Victims Restitution Fund, 240 hours of community service, and an anti-domestic violence public service announcement.
Yo, this is Dr. Dre.
A small price to pay for a man who eventually became a multimillionaire, even though accusations of violence against women will continue to tarnish his overall reputation. Dee Barnes was not as lucky. Pump It Up ended later in 1991. Her music and journalism careers petered out after that, with claims that she was blackballed for daring to file misdemeanor charges against Dre. And instead of being celebrated as perhaps hip-hop's first female journalist, Dee Barnes is now best known as the subject of domestic abuse discussions and punchlines, the most infamous of them all being from, coincidentally, one of Dre's proteges. The earthquake of conflict between N.W.A. and Ice Cube and its aftershocks eventually overshadowed 100 Miles and Runnin. Granted, it was commercially successful. It was ready gold by the end of 1990 and platinum by 1992. But for years after its release, it has remained a rarely discussed, virtually forgotten record. A 2002 remastering of N.W.A.'s second album, Niggas for Life, further obscured it, absorbing 4 of the EP's 5 tracks. One of the EP's songs, Real was ported to the album upon its release in 1991, and Just Don't Bite It got an update with another album track, She Swallowed It. That leaves the original EP with the title track, which could have made it to the album, an inferior sequel to Police, and a closing track phonetically named Commercial, which has Ren announcing the upcoming Niggas for Life over the same funky beats used to open the album. What's left is really 2 out of 5. 3 out of 5 if we're being nice. So, ultimately, 100 Miles and Runnin' is a prelude of tragedy. It should be best known for being the first major point of evolution for who would become one of the best music producers in history. Instead, the imbalance between nihilism, self-parody, and shock tactics, and analysis, social commentary, and lyricism, not to mention a former member giving his former group a run for their money, foreshadowed the inevitable unraveling of N.W.A. Besides, if more than half of the songs have been or should have been subsumed by something else, what really is the point checking it out anyway?